Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would join me, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If I could, I'd like to start the town hall meeting off by an introduction. On my far right is our attorney, Stephen Jopik. We have our clerk, Luann Candle, our treasurer, Kathy Hondo, myself, Ron Trombley, the supervisor. To my left, Scott Clifford, our trustee, and our planner, Mr. Stephen Casson. Appreciate the attendance tonight for this town hall meeting. Mr. Jopik and Mr. Casson are going to give a presentation. We would ask if you would refrain from asking questions during the presentation. We'd like to give everybody an opportunity at the end, and we'll stay as long as we have to make sure we hear any comments, any questions. We ask that you direct all comments and questions to the board for interaction purposes. No direct interaction with crowd members. We want to keep this as civil as possible and keep it going in a timely manner. We'll try to give you as much time as we possibly can. We ask that you not be repetitive in your statements, and we'll get through this the best we can. But we appreciate the attendance tonight, and this is one thing I must emphasize. This is for informational purposes only. This is not whether we're for or against. This is for us to gain feedback from the residents and business owners and people from in and around our community, so we get a good feeling of what direction to take in this. And that's the purpose of this meeting. We have a lot of people that have no idea what this medical marijuana is about or how it's going to affect us. And we are getting, I can tell you, inundated on a daily basis with calls, with people wanting to come into our township on what they can and can't do. And this is something we feel by putting this information out, we can make good informed decisions. So in stating that, I'd like to let Mr. Jopik get going with this, and I appreciate once again your attendance. Thank you. Mr. Jopik.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Can everybody hear me? Am I coming through on the mic okay?
You know what, if you want to grab that one, that way we'll have you on the tape too.
Okay. All right.
Is that one on, Jeanette?
Pardon me?
There's another one right there.
Okay, great.
Just turn it on.
I flail a lot with my hands. Okay, is that on? Yeah. Great. Then I'm going to take this one off. Hang on for 1 second. All right, great. Well, I'm going to stand out here. My presentation is going to be up there. I don't know if the board wants to maybe have a seat so you can easily see the presentation or turn your seats around. I'm sorry if my back's going to... Normally I present to the board when I'm asked questions and talk up here. But this time this is an open house, so I'm sure it's okay with the board if I address everybody who took some time out of their busy lives to come here this evening to talk about this issue and this topic that communities across the state of Michigan are encountering. A little bit about me, as Supervisor Trombley indicated, I'm the township attorney. I am what's called a municipal lawyer. I've been an attorney for over 23 years now. I devoted my entire 23 years, my entire career to representing municipalities, cities, villages, townships, and I also do some real estate work, but almost at this juncture, actually, I do nothing but represent municipalities. All of my clients, everything I do relates to representing cities, townships, and villages. And my firm, I think we're about 27, 28 attorneys. We all do municipal law. That's what we do. That's what our practice is about, serving the communities where we live. Not only do we serve them as attorneys, a lot of us serve on boards and commissions and volunteer and so forth. We're very committed to not only the communities we live in, but the communities we represent. And this is an important issue. I'm happy to be here. I'm proud to have an opportunity to stand up here and talk with you today about that, about this topic. Now, in terms of my experience with medical marijuana law, it goes back about 9 years. I don't think many people go back much farther than 9 or 10 years with medical marijuana law. Why is that? Because in 2008 is when the first law was enacted regarding medical marijuana. You may recall voting on it if you appeared at the polls at that time. And what was on the ballot was an initiative to adopt a statute called the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. That act passed by vote of the people of the state of Michigan at that election, and it became a law in Michigan. And we've been working with that law, municipalities across the state and the state of Michigan and counties and everybody have been working with that law since that time. I've attended countless seminars, educational conferences, and I've presented at some of them as well on this topic. I read articles that come out regularly, and I've written on the subject as well. So I've tried to become as knowledgeable as I can because sometimes you can read the writing on the wall. Things are happening, things are going to change, and the minute this law came into effect in 2008, I realized when I read it as an attorney that there was going to be a lot of litigation over it, and there has been. Many court cases have been filed. Many of those have gone from the trial court to the Court of Appeals. When a case gets to the Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals decision, if it's published, becomes law. What's said in there. Why do they do that? Why does the Court of Appeals make law? Well, it's interpreting statutes and helping us to understand statutes that might not be that clear. The Michigan Medical Marijuana Act had a lot of language in it that wasn't very clear. Made it very difficult for police officers to figure out what they could and couldn't do when they're on the road and encounter folks who are legitimately in possession of a medical marijuana card or are a medical marijuana caregiver and they have marijuana on them. A lot of new training had to go into place. There was a steep learning curve that had to take place when that act went into effect. And there were a lot of things that needed to be ferreted out, and through those court cases that went to the Court of Appeals, and a smaller number, but still substantial number of cases went to the Michigan Supreme Court, where the final rule was set down, interpreting a number of things. Now, one of those things related to the ability to have provisioning centers and things of that nature, and that has been one of the biggest issues. What can you do in terms of distribution of medical marijuana under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act? If you're a caregiver, not a whole lot. You can't go out to the public. You know, generally you don't open a storefront or anything like that, and you saw that in some of the other states occurring. And eventually our state legislature, took about 8 years, came up with a statute that we're here to discuss this evening that adjusted things. So I've kind of gotten ahead of myself a little bit here. What I'd ask you to do, what I've done, I've gotten ahead of myself by indicating where are we now, and I've rehashed a little bit about the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Let me give a little bit more on that, but before I do, let me take a step back and just ask you to do something this evening, and just, you know, Supervisor Trombley mentioned it a little bit, just hold your questions until the end. There will be an opportunity. Just sit back and listen. Listen, absorb, try to learn. Questions you may have rolling around in your head as I present and Mr. Casson presents and people get up and ask their questions. You might have questions rolling around. I'd encourage you to maybe write them down or just put them in the back of your mind and keep listening. Don't focus on your question as much as listening, because there's a good chance your question is going to get answered along the way. And if it doesn't, there will be a chance at the end to bring it up. Okay, every question, every comment is important. The board is here, they want to hear it. They want to get answers, they want to get information. Let's all just kind of observe, listen. Put your listening ears on, as my teacher used to say. So what about the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act? Haven't I covered? Well, generally it talks about patients that have a medical marijuana registry card and caregivers. Okay, the patients are able, if they have a card, to consume medical marijuana because they have a condition, they've been to a doctor, who has certified that they have a condition that qualifies them to receive the card, and they've registered with the state of Michigan and they have their card. The caregivers are those that are able to grow the medical marijuana, cultivate it, and provide it to the patients. That's why they're called caregivers. They're giving care by giving the medicine, the medical marijuana, to the patients who can't grow it for themselves. And a caregiver can grow for him or herself as well. The caregiver can grow up to 12 plants for each patient, and they can have up to 5 patients, right? It's a lot of plants, 60 plants. Then they can grow 12 more for themselves, 72 plants. For anybody who may have seen or experienced medical marijuana or marijuana plants, they can get pretty large and unwieldy, and it takes a lot of effort and energy to grow them, and that can be quite a facility to even put together the plants if a caregiver has 5 patients and is providing for themselves as well. So those are the 2 categories of cards that are issued by the state of Michigan, for caregivers and for patients. And that's what we've been operating under. And there's all sorts of regulations and rules that are in that statute. I am summarizing to the nth degree. I'm just giving you very broad strokes. So there's a lot of detail. Like I said, a lot of court cases have come down. We're not here to talk about that as much as we are to talk about what has changed. But before I do, what did the township do after the 2008 Act went into place? They adopted an amendment to their zoning ordinance. And that amendment allowed medical marijuana caregivers to grow their plants in residential districts, essentially as a home occupation. Some of you may have heard of home occupations. The zoning ordinance is set up with residential districts or agricultural residential districts, commercial districts, industrial districts. Each district, you're limited in what you can do in that district under the zoning ordinance. And the zoning ordinance, of course, is a law that's adopted by the township. And everybody in the community is in a certain district, okay? Everybody throughout the township. What this law said was that in the residential districts, the certain districts that as a home occupation you could be a medical marijuana caregiver, and that's where that activity could take place. All right, so that's the current state of the township's law. So now you have the 2008 Act by the state of Michigan and what the township did in response to that act sometime after 2008. So that's where we've been, that's where we are now, and what has changed. Well, what's changed is on September 20th, 2016, Governor Snyder signed into law 3 new public acts. And they provide for medical marijuana legalization in Michigan under these acts and extensive new laws. They're listed there, Act 281, 282, and 283. And they expand the regulatory framework for the medical marijuana industry. Clarify a lot of things that a lot of people have been asking questions about for a long time. So I'm going to go through each one of these acts and talk about them. The first one, and the most significant one, with respect to the township at least, is 281. Public Act 281 is called the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. Can't just be a simple name, of course, they have to attach all sorts of words to it. I haven't seen the acronym for it, but I guess it would be MMFLA. Here are some highlights. I'm going to go through a lot of them. It provides powers and duties for state and local governments, the township being a local government, of course, in relation to medical marijuana. So it identifies new powers and new duties, authority of the township. It regulates the growth, the processing, the transportation, the provisioning of medical marijuana across the state. It establishes a licensing system. This is probably one of the most significant parts of the new act for medical marijuana businesses. And that licensing system will be implemented and enforced by the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs at the state, called LARA, L-A-R-A. If anybody's involved in liquor licensing, this part of the state of Michigan might be familiar to you. It also is the agency that issues liquor licenses. And I often compare what's being done for medical marijuana, the medical marijuana industry, to what was done for the liquor licensing industry. And so the state is going to be issuing licenses for medical marijuana facilities. And it creates a medical marijuana licensing board. Who's ever heard of the Liquor Control Commission? That's the body that issues the license for liquor licenses. So here we have the Medical Marijuana Licensing Board for medical marijuana facilities in Michigan now that has been created. The State Act provides the requirements to get a license for what are called commercial entities to grow, sell, pay taxes on medical marijuana. What's a commercial entity? When I first read it, I asked that very question because I'm thinking, well, what about individuals? Well, the Act itself doesn't define it, but if you look in some of the legislative history, which is where I went to find it, it talks about that a commercial entity includes individuals, sole proprietorships, partnerships, et cetera, all sorts of different sorts of companies that can be established. Whether that will be interpreted in that fashion by a court remains to be seen. So Public Act 281 allows the state to regulate and monitor, and I'll talk a little bit about monitoring later on, medical marijuana providers, including 5 categories, general categories anyway. There are some subcategories, but lump them in here for purposes of this presentation as growers, processors, transporters, provisioning centers, and safety compliance facilities. The Act also tasks the state administration with establishing what are called administrative regulations for purposes of implementing and detailing the licensing process and regulating the licensees, including some standards and some finer details. So the State Act can be viewed as a broader set of regulations, and the administrative regulations that are adopted by the state administratively, not by the state house and whatnot, or signed by the governor. These don't go through that process. They're administrative regulations that are adopted by basically the state bureaucracy. Okay, so they set those up. There's a set that are set up for liquor licensing. They have liquor license regulations that are administrative regulations, and they're working on these. That's why it says not done yet, or at least I haven't heard of them being done yet. I don't think they're super far with them yet, but those need to be set up. That is one of the things that we're looking forward to see and how this all unfolds. It also allows the state to issue sanctions for non-compliance with the laws. Now, this might be a little hard to read, especially with the light coming in, but this is the part that's probably most relevant to the township, and it's sections 205 and 501 through 505 of Act 281. These sections, section 205, forbids marijuana facilities from operating in the township unless the township, your township board, adopts an ordinance authorizing them to do so. Now, the language of the statute clarifies, and I'm grateful for this, that the township can do that by way of zoning ordinances restricting the location and number of licensed marijuana facilities. Why am I happy about that? I'm not happy about it because it allows them to regulate it. I'm happy about it because it says if you want to, you can. So there's no question. We won't have to go to court to have this interpreted. Okay? That saves money for everybody, because if the township gets sued, taxpayer money gets paid to have to defend that suit or bring that suit or proceed with that suit. The legislature has clarified this issue for us, saving us money, as I say it, which I think is a good thing. That's why I'm happy about it. Whether the township adopts an ordinance or not is unknown at this time. The township board has not discussed this issue. I can represent that to you. This is the first time a full presentation is being presented to the board on this issue. I think many of the board members have attended some seminars to get educational information on the matter so that they're preparing themselves, gathering information, which is what they do. They soak it all up. Eventually, they're going to make a decision on this issue, and the decision is, are we going to do anything? Are we going to adopt an ordinance? And if so, what is that ordinance going to look like, or those ordinances? Okay? We're not there yet. We're not even close. Not even close. No decisions are going to be made tonight or for some period of time. Now, Section 504 also specifically limits marijuana growing operations to properties zoned for industrial or agricultural uses or non-zoned property. That's what the statute says. But the language of the statute also allows for an argument, as I see it, that once a township enacts an ordinance allowing it, then the state can consider the limitations set forth in the township ordinance prior to its granting of a license. So perhaps there's some flexibility there. That's something that unfortunately may need to be clarified in the future, as I see it anyway. Again, I think I said this, but to reiterate, because it's a critical part of this, the township is not required to enact an ordinance allowing medical marijuana facilities in Lennox Township. There's no mandate, there's no requirement for it to do so. It has the option to do so if it feels like it's a good fit for Lennox Township. That's why they're reaching out to you to get your input on the issue as well. Important topic. So if the township does adopt an ordinance, it can establish an annual non-refundable fee of now more than $5,000 that can be retained by the township to alleviate its administrative costs in overseeing medical marijuana facilities in its community. So that helps to alleviate perhaps the taxpayers from having to pay additional taxes for any burden that's put on the township in implementing this. Also, the act creates what's called the Medical Marijuana Excise Fund. And those funds are held by the state and distributed to the state, to counties, and to municipalities. The township, if it enacted an ordinance, would be one of those municipalities. The amount of the fund is allocated in proportion to the number of marijuana facilities within the municipality. And under it, municipalities receive 25% of the fund that gets divvied up based on the number of facilities in your community. Counties get 30% and a separate 5% to support county sheriffs. The state is the rest. Now, Public Act 281 took effect, all of the things I've been talking about took effect on December 20th, 2016, last year. That's when it took effect. But the act says that a license, you heard me talk about the fact that the state is going to start issuing licenses. Well, they're not going to do that until at least December 15, 27. The statute indicates that a license can't even be applied for until that date. So we're not going to see licenses generated for some period after that date. So I say there that this impacts the ability and timing of the township to fully evaluate, carefully review its options, and possibly take action to adopt an ordinance. Why do I say that? Because, well, we don't know what the administrative regulations are going to be like yet. And we haven't seen any licenses come through yet. Until the township adopts an ordinance, no licenses can be granted in Lennox Township by the state of Michigan, the way the law currently reads. It impacts us because it says, well, do your homework, start looking into it, just like the township is right now. The township is being proactive, studying this, taking a look at it, and maybe it'll have a decision made by the state. It's not required to have a decision by that date. If it does nothing, if the township does nothing on this, then no licenses can be issued. There has to be some affirmative action taken. And you don't have to take an action saying you're not going to do it. Just by not acting is you don't have an ordinance. Okay, so that's the biggie. Quicker ones are Public Act 282. Those are some medical marijuana cards, by the way. I forgot mine. I had a picture of the Michigan Law Library up there earlier. Anybody who's a Michigan fan, it's quite a picture. But Public Act 282, it's an amendment to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which is the one I talked about from 2008, remember? That's the existing law. 282 amends it, generally to reflect the various methods used to consume medical marijuana, adding definitions for marijuana-infused products and usable marijuana equivalents, basically edible marijuana, non-smokable type consumption of medical marijuana. To me, I think that this was primarily geared at clarifying some of the issues under the existing 2008 law. Again, cleaning some things up. For township purposes, for Lennox Township's purposes, what's important to recognize about 282 is that it didn't change the ability under the MMMA for caregivers to grow up to 12 plants for 5 patients, as well as growing 12 plants for themselves, which I discussed earlier. It didn't change that. Kept it the way it was. So that's still in place. For anybody who's wondering, a question I often get is, what about 2008? What about the original Medical Marijuana Act? Is it still in place? The answer is yes. Can caregivers still get licenses and so forth? Yes. The answer is yes to that. What about Public Act 283? This is the Marijuana Tracking Act. I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk a little bit about monitoring, and I mentioned that the state is able to monitor. This is the act that's put into place with many provisions to address that issue. This act has provisions that requires a licensee to adopt and use a third-party inventory control and tracking system capable of interfacing with the statewide monitoring system so that the state can monitor and track marijuana all across the state. Kind of neat. I'm anxious to see a lot more about it. I've heard a lot about it and been learning about it. Sounds pretty high tech, but it's all in there. They thought of this, recognize the importance of being able to keep track of what is legitimate medical marijuana that is going around the state of Michigan and being distributed to consumers in our state. So the purpose of 283 is to create a system to monitor compliance, the compliance of commercial traffic in medical marijuana. It requires LARA to establish statewide internet-based monitoring system to track the commercial production and distribution of medical marijuana and related products. So there you have it. This is the monitoring part of it all. So what's in store for the future of medical marijuana? As I see it anyway, this is me talking, not the statutes talking. Well, like I said, we're waiting to see what the state's administrative regulations will look like. We're waiting to see when the first license will be issued, what that process will be, how that's going to go. Will there be another wave of court cases? Anytime you have new statutes adopted, people read them differently sometimes. Parties who have money at stake, who are investing in this industry, might think the statute reads one way, whereas somebody else, namely the Attorney General for the state of Michigan, or maybe a local community or a county or a sheriff's department, might read it another way. And so what happens is you go to court, you ultimately end up in court a lot of times to figure it out. And the court again will interpret it. Now, will there be another wave like we saw with the 2008 Act? I don't know. This act, it looks like they took a lot of time on it. They did hard work on it. I know I talked to several of the people that were involved in the drafting process as part of one of the seminars, a panel that I was at. Very interesting from a person from the medical marijuana industry, an attorney who was part of that process was there, and it sounded like they really put a great effort into pulling it together. And when you have that, and it's collaborative, and everybody's coming together to try and address the issues and address them thoroughly, a lot of times that'll cut down on the number of court cases. So hopefully we won't have another wave like we did last time, but you never know. I mentioned what will happen to the old 2008 law. Well, it still exists for now. In talking to some of the folks that I talked about, some of the thoughts are that eventually that might get phased out because it might be no longer necessary once this new statute gets into place. I was told, I mean, this is all off the record unofficial things, that they kept it in place and molded it in for now just because it's a good placekeeper. But this new act is designed to hopefully put a system in place of licensing, similar, like I said, to the liquor licensing, that'll be independent and will run on its own. Again, like I said, that remains to be seen. We'll see if that happens. Will anything change in terms of enforcement at the federal government level? I don't know if anybody's heard about that. This is one of the most fascinating parts of this whole set of laws and regulations and what the state of Michigan and many other states have done when they enact these. To a lawyer, it's fascinating from a legal standpoint, but it's fascinating from a societal, economic, political standpoint. What is fascinating about it? Federal law says medical marijuana is illegal. It's a violation of federal law. It has been all along. President Obama chose not to enforce it. He issued a directive not to expend resources on regular old medical marijuana caregivers and patients and whatnot by the federal agents. So there was a very small amount of federal enforcement from what I've learned and came to understand. And the fear of that federal enforcement also seemed to subside in the state of Michigan. And that's just my perception as I am sitting as a municipal attorney. In meeting with people from the industry and talking with them, as I've done many times, both here, with the township representatives and in other communities. What's going to happen though with the new administration in Washington? Some indicate that Attorney Sessions has a different view than the prior administration. Whether President Trump shares that, we don't know. Seems like they're distracted with a lot of other things right now. I don't think their attention is focused on this right now. But that leaves it open. What's going to happen? It's a big question. If I were involved in the industry, it would be a big question in my mind, that's for sure. Will Michigan voters decide to just legalize marijuana? Get rid of the medical part, just make it all legal. A lot of talk about that, petitions being circulated, lawsuits there filed over some petitions that were recently circulated. It's going to get on the ballot most likely, just my opinion, but I think a lot of people would agree with me. It's going to get on the ballot, and we'll see what happens. That could change everything with what we have here. What happens to medical marijuana in the new act if that happens? We'll have to see. Lastly, and most importantly for us tonight, now that we got all of our studying and homework and law and questions out there and issues out there and what's been happening, the big question is, what are Lennox Township's options and what works best for its community, for this community? Every community across the state, and I shouldn't say every, most of the communities, everyone that I talk to, and my colleagues across the state of Michigan, I'm on a listserv of municipal attorneys, I'm on other listservs that are involved with this. Everybody's talking about this and trying to figure out what to do. And what are they doing? They're looking at their community. They're looking at their surroundings. What do they look like? What's the character of their community? What are the people like? What's the philosophy like? What's the culture like? What fits for that community? And that's what is, me working in this, it gets me excited because it's just great that our legislature entrusted that to our local communities to figure out what fits them best. Because that's where it should be, closest to the people. Each community decide what fits best for them. That's why these folks are here. That's why you put them here. And that's why they want to hear from you, what fits the community best. And it's not just in this room, it'll be around town, discussions, time passes, more discussions, meetings. But this is a start, this is part of it. And it's been going on. And in terms of that, The township has ordinances, which I explained earlier are laws. And as I said, it's a question of whether it's going to adopt an ordinance. Well, what type of ordinance can be adopted? Well, it would most likely be a zoning ordinance and possibly a licensing ordinance of some sort. Those are laws, and the zoning has to do with land use, planning, character of the community, and what fits best, like I was saying. And for that part of the presentation, that's why Mr. Casson is here. I'm a lawyer, can't help it. Gotta have some disclaimers that this is just a short summary and it's not intended as legal advice, blah, blah, blah. It's not even tiny, small print, it's big letters for it. But anyway, thanks a lot, I appreciate it. I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Casson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Steve. That was excellent. And one of the best summaries I've heard. And I've been to a lot of these
Thank you very much.
sessions. My name is Steve Casson, and I'm the Township Land Use Planner. Give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been in this business for over 40 years, 25 years with Clinton Township, just down the road. And I retired last year from Macomb County as their planning and economic development director, and am working here now with LENOX Township. My background has been principally land use planning. I work with communities, and what land use planning means is that we deal with zoning ordinances, development regulations, master plans, as opposed to if I could have went into transportation planning or housing planning. My specific role is land use planning, and I deal here with the zoning ordinances. Now, planner's role is only to recommend. We recommend certain ordinances to the Township Board and to our Planning Commission, some of which members are here tonight also to listen in. As Mr. Jopik had indicated, he didn't say it this way, but there's like 3 different phases or compartments or something that we've gone through. The first is, we're not here to debate medical marijuana. The state has already done that. You as residents have already done that. Medical marijuana is here in the state. So we put that aside. The second aspect we got to deal with is, does the township want to regulate medical marijuana, and how, if they do they want to regulate it within the zoning ordinance as the state enabling or the state act gave us the right to do. Thirdly, if the township board decides that they want to go along and allow some types of facilities, then my job and the Planning Commission, working with the residents and the Township Board, come to decide how we want to regulate this. What are the zoning districts we'd like it to go in, how many we might want it to put in. Now, the legislation, as Mr. Jopik indicated, has 5 different operations or entities: growers, processors, transporters, provisioning centers, and safety compliance facilities. They gave us the right to allow all of them, to allow none of them, or to allow some of them. They also gave us the right to limit the number of them. For example, the Township Board may say, we don't like growing operations, we're a little bit skeptical about the distribution or the provisioning centers. We'll allow whatever, pick a number of grow facilities, and we'll allow that. But right now, I think we're going to be silent and now allow distribution facilities or sales facilities. Or they can say, we like the idea of testing, that's a nice research industry, we'll allow that. So again, the Township Board, with input from the residents, gets to decide how they want to, or how many they want to allow, or if any. Now, within a zoning ordinance, we have various ways of handling these things. For example, several years ago, there was all this legislation and litigation on adult uses. And some communities across the country decided that adult uses would be concentrated, and they wanted a district. And other communities decided that we like the idea of spreading them out and maybe having a distance of 1,000 feet or a quarter of a mile between each one. We have that right. We can decide whether we want to concentrate. We can decide whether we want to consolidate. There's also other things we can do. We can require, how do we allow it? As a principal use in the district, which means if you're the correct zoning, you're allowed to put this in provided you meet site planning and building permits requirements. Or we can add conditions. You're allowed in that district provided you are on a major road, not close to 50 or 500 feet to a church, school, playground, or you're not any closer to 1,000 feet to another district. So we can do it with conditions. Then thirdly, we can do what they call under special land use approval, which is basically having conditions, but above and beyond those conditions, the state law allows us to, requires us to hold a public hearing for property owners within 300 feet. We put a notice in the paper, it's general circulation, and we invite people to the meeting and we receive input. And besides meeting those minimum conditions I talked about, main road, 1,000 feet, the Township Board Planning Commission gets to use a little bit more discretion in determining whether it's compatible with the area. Maybe this particular instance wasn't quite right. There's some circumstances. It might have been a school route that nobody envisioned. So there's a little bit more discretion there. So these are the things, if and when the Township Board decides they'd like to regulate that, and they looked at me and Steve, and they say, we need you guys to come up with regulations, zoning ordinance regulations, that allow us to do this, not that, in this sort of way. And that's what our next role would be if and when the board decides how to handle this. Now, my job's easy. I just put into, our job, Steve and my job's easy. We just put the regulations together. The policy decision's a tough one, and that's what they're here for tonight, is to listen to the residents' input on that. And lastly, I just find this funny because 30 years ago when I was in Clinton Township, I remember a similar public hearing like this. And we were dealing with whether, or not public hearing, a town hall meeting, and we were dealing with whether to allow pinball arcades. And the place was crowded. It was more crowded than it was here. But people didn't want them in their neighborhoods. They wanted to keep them from churches. They wanted them, and never in my wildest imagination did I think 30 years later we'd be doing the same thing with marijuana. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Appreciate your comments. I'd like to also thank two of the Planning Commission members that are here tonight, Mr. Joe Marino and Mr. Mike Vennard. Appreciate you coming. I know they put in a lot of time on this issue. This is a very hot topic for the township, and as much information and education that we receive too, we appreciate. But I'm going to open it up to questions, comments at this time. If you would, when you get to the podium, please state your name and address for the record, and try to keep it under 5 minutes if you could, just in the interest of time. So with that, if anyone would like to please. Thank you, sir.
All right, I'll start us off.
Thank you.
Good evening, Justin Danaskis.
If you'd like to bring that around to the side, make it easier for you, that
Sure.
whatever easiest there. There we go. Thank you much.
All right, Justin Danaskis, there we go. 169 West Clarkson Road, Orion Township. I'm with a multi-client government affairs lobbying consulting organization, Danaskis Consulting Development. And we do work at the federal, state, and local level. And we were retained back in the beginning of the 15-16 legislative session by a medical marijuana trade group. And we've actually became one of the main stakeholders that helped develop the policy that your attorney so nicely articulated this evening. And so we got a lot of depth on the issue, some backstory on how the policy came about and so forth. And then I also chair Orion Township's Planning Commission, so I throw my planning and zoning hat on. I've been doing that for 9 or 10 years now, so it's kind of a little trifecta of the different resources and depth we have on this subject matter. So I give you a little background context of why we've earned a little bit of a right to speak on it. And so with that background, we hope to serve as a resource along with your great consultants and attorney on the subject matter. And to serve as that resource, and we've already looked back a little bit how we got here, but I want to point out one thing, how we actually got the legislature to act after 8 years. Okay, the voters passed, as the attorney said, back in 08, pretty resoundingly with 63% of the state voting in favor of it. But the legislature never acted, they never addressed the commercialization of it. So how, after so much time in a very conservative legislature, do we get someone to act? And why now? Well, it's really because why you folks are here too, a public health, safety, and welfare matter. See, over the years, there has been a rampant commercialization of the medical marijuana market, as you're probably well aware of, throughout the state, which was never addressed through state statute, and so it went unchecked, unregulated. Not to say there's not good medicine provided out there by patients and their caregivers, but essentially it's run unregulated, unchecked. So our legislature, be it the governor, the Senate, and the House, saw this was a public safety and healthcare issue, and we need to address it. And so on the health side, they said, you know, we need safer alternative access to alternative medicine. And this medicine, in a lot of cases, is more effective than some pharmaceuticals. Safety. Right now, traditionally, all the products coming from home grows. You know, not very conducive for commercial operations. We have wiring issues, water issues, folks doing different infused products, use different pressurized gases, and so forth. So to get it out of the closet, marijuana has been in this community, in every community throughout this nation for a very long time. It's not going anywhere. The citizens want it, so we need to get it safety, bring it out of the darkness, and provide that safety to the patients so they get safe medicine, medicine that's regulated and tested. And also for the welfare. This new regulated market brings a lot of opportunity to municipalities through the form of new investment, tax revenue that was talked about, fees, job opportunities, new industry, technology that's vastly approaching this industry. So it's that reason why you should really be looking at and negotiating from a standpoint of why not opt in to all 5 licenses. It's here. All the studies show that the forbidden fruit, once taken away, things go down. Less access to youth and those that shouldn't get it. We should be really negotiating from that standpoint, because that's why all your folks are elected, you know, to serve the public health, safety, and welfare. There's caregivers and patients in this community and the surrounding communities, and they're not going anywhere. And so as we look at, you know, moving forward, as we look at opting in, there's a number of ways to look at through special use or just a permitted right use and so forth. And we've actually had a couple of our ordinance models actually already adopted in the state. And now is actually the time to really be going through this, because as you're getting the calls, as you said, industry wants to know where and how they can go and so forth. So now is the time to act. We have direction through the statute on, you know, how you can direct and plan and zone for these things, and hopefully we can serve as a resource, as a conduit on some of those rulemaking and some stuff that would, you know, give you some other insight to kind of more of the details of the industry. But when you look at it, the benefits it brings through the tax revenue, as you went over the 3%, the local fee you can charge, the investment, these new facilities. In your case, looking at your municipality, in most cases, it's all going to be build-to-suits pretty much. Maybe some rehab and some of the existing product you might have in your commercial spaces. But these are build-to-suits that are bringing you a huge tax base, obviously, in addition to the excess tax. And just as a rough number for you, on average, it's cost $72 a square foot just to build out an industrial grow opportunity. In most cases, if you're going for a Class C 1,500 plant count, you're going to want 15,000 minimum plus square feet. And they're paying $72 a foot just on your FF&E fixtures, equipment, and furnishings in that. That's not counting the building they're going to build and so forth. So these are great opportunities. And they also come in all sizes, so opportunities for your local residents. There's a Class A 500 plant count where a caregiver can transition, look to get into the industry. There's going to be barriers to entry, but you know, we're going to try to keep it a free market. So the good news is you got great opportunities for your local residents, local area business, as well as attract new opportunities from around the state. And even on the provisioning centers, people are paying $100, $150, $200 plus a square foot to just finish out the space, not including if they're buying a building, building a building. They're, you know, the industry has progressed, and we look to the regulated market. These look like high-end jewelry stores, a Starbucks, an Apple, and we'd be happy to, you know, kind of show you what, you know, the proposed things are. And then the jobs, these are technology jobs. In the different states and the regulated markets, we've never found one person making minimum wage, even if they're sweeping the floor. The industry, you know, it can be lucrative. It's not a sure thing by any means, but there's opportunity there, and they pay for good health. And these businesses know the light's on them, that the scrutiny is still on, this industry is still coming out of the closet. So you know, what we found we've already had a social experiment in Michigan through the commercialization, folks that allow the dispensaries, and the crime is going down. They're the best building in the whole block. There's not a stick of gum on the ground because they know the eyes are on them. And it even gets better once we look at transitioning into commercial markets. Again, be it an industrial site, they're the cleanest one, they have money to keep up their landscaping and so forth. So, I will hope to serve as a resource for as as you folks navigate these waters. And again, we have model ordinances and kind of been on both sides of the aisle, so hopefully just serve as a resource. But really, think about it as the public health, safety, and welfare, negotiating from that standpoint. Because if you choose to do nothing and not allow these facilities, essentially, you're still going to have medical marijuana in the community, you're still going to have patients and caregivers. Now all the money, opportunity dollars are just going to be flowing through your corridors, through your grashing and so forth. So with that, I'll stay around for any questions if I can need depth and share some information with you, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, please. Good evening. My name is Chris Boyd, Lennox Township. I've been on Olmo Road for over 25 years. I'm not against medical marijuana. I know that's not what's on the agenda tonight. I have family members that have used it for cancer and MS very successfully. I'm all for it. What I'm not for is having people growing huge amounts, and I know Steve talked about so many plants, and you can, for up to 5 people, 6 people technically with themselves. That's a huge grow operation, and I don't want that across the street from my kids and my grandkids. There are places for these things. Dispensaries, maybe. Bring it on the Gratiot corridor. Like this gentleman said, it's controlled. They know the eyes are on them. If someone's doing this in their pole barn over on Olmo Road, 29 Mile, whatever, the eyes aren't on them. Not as much, okay? Things are going to happen. When you have drugs and money, you're going to have crime. They're hand in hand. It's going to happen. And anybody that thinks that's not going to happen is pretty naive. It's going to happen. So when everything comes down, I hope that this board and the residents, if it comes to being on during an election, puts our community, our kids, our residents before the almighty dollar, okay? Because I know everybody's talking about how there is money that can be made. Money's not everything. We have a landfill, okay? Brings in a lot of money, but everybody hates it. Nobody wants it here. We have a prison on 26 Mile. What more are we going to bring into this community? We don't need it. Again, I have no problem with medical marijuana. This is just, our community is not the place to be growing it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Tom McGovern. I'm actually wearing a couple of hats here. I'm a resident of Lennox Township. I've been on Bates Road since the late 80s, so almost 30 years. I would say that, from a residential standpoint, as a resident, I'm certainly in favor of having facilities that comply with the act that had just been passed, the 5 different licenses that can be given out. I agree with the gentleman that just spoke that it's probably not a good idea to have it in our residential areas. That doesn't make any sense, but I will acknowledge that they're already in the residential areas because the caregivers, the current act allows people to have caregivers growing in their residential areas. So we really can't affect that. That's really not what we're here to talk about today. So when it comes to the commercial operations involving it, I think that the Gratiot corridor is like a perfect spot. We've had water and sewer, or at least water. I think we have sewer through there too. Yes. But that's been for many years, and it's very not utilized to its potential by any means. I know we've got the dump right on Gratiot, and that would be like a perfect area to concentrate these sort of things from my perspective at least. And then I should also point out the other hat that I'm wearing here tonight is I'm also an attorney in Richmond, and I've been an attorney in Richmond since 1991. And just from an attorney standpoint too, I think it just makes a lot of sense to regulate the industry. The state legislature has already made that decision to do so, and there's no reason. I think if we just don't allow it in this township, we would miss out on a big financial opportunity here. And again, I know Mr. Boyd just mentioned that money isn't everything, and I certainly agree with that. Quality of life of the residents is everything. But we're dealing with a Gratiot corridor that's underused. It's a prime area, maybe not on Gratiot itself, even maybe down 29 Mile Road where the dump is, where nothing else wants to be located in that general vicinity. I think the master plan already anticipates that from the railroad tracks going east is going to be the area for development. So I think we just kind of concentrate any of the 5 licensing facility licenses that could be given out, it would make sense to have them in the area that's already in the master plan for commercialization of this township, and keep the rest of it residential, agricultural, the way it is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Just for informational purposes only, as you discussed the Gratiot Corridor, the sewer, we do have sewer on 26 Mile Road and the Gratiot Corridor from 26 to 31 Mile Road. Currently, we only have approximately, I believe it's 16 customers for all of that line, at a cost of roughly about 2.6 million cost to us a year for that sewer line. And our revenue that we take in doesn't come close to that. So that has been one of our issues that we've wanted to help develop the Gratiot Corridor.
Well, thank you for the additional information.
Thank you. Next, please. Any other comments? Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Short and sweet. My name is Robbie Hamilton. I live near Lennox, work within the township. After hearing a couple of comments, it was very interesting. What I was looking forward to most. Not that the presentations weren't awesome, very informative. I'm for it in every sense of the word. All things considered, I think with what the board plans on doing, it can be done the right way. That's really about it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No other comments? Well, any questions? Well, we got everybody here. As you see, we were very fortunate to have Mr. Jopic and Mr. Casson. Mr. Casson was previously with another company. When an opportunity came for the township to hire him, just specifically also with dealing with this issue, we were lucky enough to get a gentleman with almost 40 years experience in all aspects of the county. So that's how important this issue is to us. We want to make sure that we get as much feedback as we can from you, questions, comments, everything. So if anybody has anything, please don't be afraid. Come up and let us know, and we're going to do the best job we can to reflect our community's wishes. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my
Good
name is
evening.
Maria Hamilton. I live in Lennox Township.
Thank you. Thank you for coming up.
I do believe in the medical marijuana.
Could you pull the microphone over just a little bit? Thank you.
I do believe in it. Reason being, I have a son that, since he was 9 years old, developed epilepsy. And we have been through a lot with him. The seizures just became worse and worse and worse as time went on, until we spoke to both of his neurologists and brought up the medical marijuana. Well, to make it short, he has been prescribed that for the past 3 years, and our son has not had a seizure for 3 years now, so of course I believe it. It's very important. That's just coming from a mom. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
My name is Amy Shemke. I live in Millstone Pond. As my role as office manager there, I have concerns. I guess my thoughts would be, I would like to see, I feel like if it wasn't allowed in residential areas, that could eliminate my concerns. We've got a pretty high concentration of people in that area. So the general, concerns go up. I also have seen lots of great benefits, so I'm not opposed to it, but I am concerned about what our ability to monitor it for our own residents would be. I'm hoping that we would be able to be clear about how you identify what a legitimate card looks like. There's lots of things that can be produced, and hopefully there'd be education available that we can be able to monitor that specifically. I would like to definitely see, if it is permitted, limits, and I wonder if only allowing a certain number within a certain distance would also help, because again, with, over 220 occupied homes, it would be an issue if there weren't limits for us. So that's just my 2 cents worth, but I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
My name is Alexander Shescu. I live in New Haven. I see you all within the community, especially Scott. And I would like to let you guys know that my partners operate dispensaries in Detroit, and contrary to what you may believe, we have not had one police incident. Ours happens to be one of the busiest ones in the city of Detroit. It is going to be one of the ones that's going to stay open, not out of 260 some that are being shut down. We have 2 that are in the approval process. We have had no incidents. We do a lot for the community, and if you guys would like to tour our facility, see how things are done, I'd like to invite you guys, whenever, if you have any questions. I was also heavily involved in doing the state legislation as well as Justin was, and we also did a lot of work with Detroit as well. So if you guys have any questions, I'm willing to help shed some light on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I'd like to open it up to any final comments, Attorney Steve Joppick. No. Any board members? Go ahead. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I wasn't planning on speaking, but I've listened to a few of the comments that other people have made. I wanted to kind of address some of that.
Please.
I, too, have known and have family members that have been very successful curing cancer, seizures, and other ailments through medical marijuana. I do agree it needs regulation. We need, just like the FDA and everything else, there are things going on out there that's not correct. But banning it is not the way. Making testing centers and making it easier for these people who are trying to do this is the answer, in my opinion. I want to address some of the comments about the people worrying about their neighborhoods. With all due respect, I've been in Colorado, now I live here. You have people in your neighborhoods already doing this. They're trying to follow the laws, they're trying to do it the right way. Somebody needs to make it easier for them, not harder. If you put this back in the closet and tell them they can't do it, then you're going to again attract the people that you're trying to avoid. That's my biggest fear. If you're worried about criminals or money and crime coming into your neighborhoods, make it illegal, make it more difficult, because that's the people who do it. Mainstream America is now trying to grow marijuana for medical purposes, not to get rich, as somebody said, not to bring crime into your neighborhoods. These are mom and pop, soccer moms, etc., trying to grow medicine for themselves, their patients, their family, whoever. And I think it's up to us to make it easier for them and just give them guidance and the tools they need to do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments? Any comments, Mr. Clifford?
None at all.
Else have any closing comments? At any time, we are available here at the township for any future questions or comments. Please, by all means, contact us at will. Mr. Caslin's here Monday through Wednesday. He's our point man basically on this.
That applies to me too. Anytime you want to call a township, talk to me, you can talk to me. I'll answer your voicemails, emails to the best of my ability.
We truly want to make a decision based on the wants and needs of this community, and I, speaking for myself, we're scared to make the wrong decision. We want to make sure we gather as much information to make the right decision we can for our community. We realize safety is number one, first and foremost, for everybody in this community. We especially worry about our children. I think, I don't want to speak out of line, but I think that's a great concern for us. But also, we know that it's here, and we want to do the best we can. So at any time, I encourage you to get involved, let us know what's going on, if anything else comes up. If you feel we should have another one of these, please let us know. This is the way for us not only to educate ourselves, but to educate our residents. So I thank you once again. I think this went a great time frame. An hour was perfect for everyone. I know everybody's got to get up early and work, and Fridays are tough at the end of the week, but I really appreciate it, and once again encourage you to give us a call or contact us with any issues or questions or comments regarding this. So thank you so much. Appreciate you coming out.
Hey, John.